Yeah, and then if I change it,
Adjustable, you can move these.
I want to send a message.
And
Check, see how she's.
Brandon, want to show him where to keep his mic?
I don't know why we went away from the votes and you don't know how anybody. I like that
they
idea.
can hear me, but you can't hear me on
Yeah,
the
just on the
audio.
recording.
And George needs that too.
Got a
George.
nasty note from her last
Yeah, he doesn't talk in
talk
his
into
mic.
the mic.
Okay.
Numbers tied to the numbers here.
Yeah, that's why. It's been a change like last year.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay.
Get all excited. Happy hour.
It is now 5 o'clock, March 6, 2018, and I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville. And the City Council sitting is the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the city as housing asset successor. May we have roll call, please?
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Ms. Gomez?
Present.
Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Negretti? Mayor Garcia?
Here.
Mr. Negretti absent.
This is the time and place for the general public to address the city council on any item listed or not listed on the agenda per Government Code Section 54954.3. State law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. I don't see anyone in the audience that wants to address the council. Therefore, can we have declaration of closed session items by our city attorney, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia. We have several items. However, several of these items are related. Item A on behalf of the City Council is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2 and pursuant to Government Code 54956.9E3. The facts and circumstances related to that are set forth on the agenda. Item B and C on behalf of the City Council are related to items G, H, I, and J on behalf of the Airport Authority. That is pending litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1, and the case names and case numbers with respect to all of that litigation are fully set forth on the agenda. Item D on behalf of the City Council is related to item J on behalf of the Airport Authority. Also existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1, and again, the case name and case numbers are set forth on the agenda. Lastly, item E on behalf of the City Council is related to item K on behalf of the Airport Authority, and item L on behalf of the city acting as the housing successor agency, and that is real property negotiations pursuant to Government Code 54956.8. The property location, APN numbers are set forth on the agenda, as are the negotiating parties. To the extent there's reportable action, we will report it either at the conclusion of the closed session or upon the commencement of the 6 o'clock regular session.
Thank you. We will now recess to closed session. Regular session convenes at 6 p.m. It is now 6:03, March 6, 2018. And I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville. And the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the city as housing asset successor. May we have roll call, please?
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Ms. Gomez?
Present.
Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Negretti?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. May we have closed session announcements by our city attorney, please?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We had several items this evening for closed session, several of which were related. Item A was anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, and the facts and circumstances related to that are set forth on the agenda. Items B and C were related to items F, G, H, and I, that is pending litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1, and the case names and case numbers are set forth on the agenda. Item D is related to item J on behalf of the Airport Authority, item D on behalf of the City Council. Again, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1, and again, the case names and case numbers are set forth on the agenda. And item E and item K are related, along with item L, and that is property negotiations pursuant to Government Code 54956.8, and the property location and parties for negotiation are set forth on the agenda. There is reportable action with respect to two of the cases, cases H and I, the Airport Authority litigation. The Airport Authority has voted on a motion by Councilmember Kennedy, seconded by Mayor Garcia, on a 4-1 vote, with Councilmember Gomez voting no, to appeal the court's decision with respect to the summary judgment motion. That is all of the reportable action.
Thank you. The invocation and the pledge of allegiance. The invocation will be delivered by Pastor Dane Davis from First Christian Church, and the pledge of allegiance will be led by Police Chief John Schuler, so please stand.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. I was sharing with our church family on Sunday Colossians 3:1-2 that says, "Set your hearts on things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things." So easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of our everyday lives and be focused on me, myself, and I. And in all honesty, I don't know any of the city council members really well, but I think I know you well enough to know that you're not here to build your own kingdoms. You're focused on higher things and higher priorities. You're fighting for the good of this city, and it's my privilege to pray as you make decisions tonight. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you aspiring to do what you've asked us to do, to look up, to focus on higher priorities, to get our hearts beating for things that are larger than ourselves. And so, Lord, the City Council comes representing the people of the city of Victorville, not here to build their own kingdoms, not to fight for their own agendas, but to advance the cause of this city for the good of its citizens. And I'm very proud of that, Lord. And so we're here to lift them up together in unity and prayer. Be with our mayor, Lord. Bless Mayor Garcia. She leads this council. We pray that you would be with Keith Metzler, Lord, as he leads and manages our city staff. And, Lord, all the decisions that they have to face tonight, we pray that they would be able to come to those decisions in unity and work together to honor you and for the good of our city. In Jesus' name, amen.
For the record, Mayor Garcia, I do want to indicate there's still a need to go back into closed session on 2 additional items as well. It's not complete yet.
That is correct. We will be returning to our closed session right after the regular session. This evening, we do not have any proclamations or special presentations. So I will ask our city clerk to please present the agenda to council and revisions to the agenda.
The City Council of the City of Victorville welcomes the public's participation in tonight's meeting. Persons who wish to address the council on a specific item or any item that does not appear on the agenda are requested to complete one of the white speaker cards located in the council chambers lobby and give it to the city clerk prior to the meeting. The mayor will call upon each individual who has submitted a speaker card. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, state law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. Comments made during the public hearings, written communications, or public comment sections of the agenda are to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker or less, as deemed necessary by the mayor. Communications are to be addressed directly to the city council. Individual comments to staff or members of the audience are not permitted. Any person or group who interferes with the conduct of a city council meeting by willfully interrupting and/or disrupting the meeting is subject to removal. A peace officer may be requested to assist with the removal should any person or group fail to comply with an order of removal by the council. Any person or group who resists removal by a peace officer is subject to arrest and prosecution pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.9, Penal Code Section 503. Thank you for your cooperation. All documents to be considered for approval at this meeting are before the council.
Thank you. We also do not have any appeal hearings, and we also do not have any public hearings. Therefore, we move on to our consent calendar. And our consent calendar, items C1 through C9 can be approved with one motion unless there is an item that needs to be pulled for discussion.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second it.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Ms. Gomez. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move on to written communications. Our first item, D1, amendment number 2 of the service provider agreement with Tesco Controls, Inc. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve Amendment Number 2 for an increase in the not-to-exceed amount of $50,236 and a total not-to-exceed amount of $60,236 of the service provider agreement with Tesco Controls, Incorporated for the replacement and installation of a programmable logic controller, PLC, and variable frequency drive of the Started Well Sewer Lift Station's Motor Control Center and Control Panel System under Project CC 17-062.
Thank you. At this time, are there any questions of staff by council members?
Yes.
Are you asking to speak?
Yes, I responded to your question. So briefly, would staff inform the audience and for the record of this recommendation in context with the city's sewer system management plan?
Yes, I could try to answer that question. The sanitary sewer management plan is a document that you approved largely to help offer you guidance in properly operating and maintaining your system, and it also identifies to what extent certain maintenance items are undertaken to help keep the system from actually having a sanitary system overflow. It also makes recommendations as to some of the capital operating within that system as well. This particular item is more so related to the need to improve a worn-out controller system at the pump station, the lift station, which is over at Stoddard Wells Road, and it intercepts flows and basically lifts them into a line that eventually discharges to the regional treatment plant. With the need to replace the 23 or 24-year-old controller, there is also a recommendation in here that while we're doing that, we also install a variable frequency drive, which to my understanding is one of what would be 3. There's 2 others driving the other 2 pumps, and this would be a third to drive the third pump to give us a greater amount of redundancy, which is a spoken to requirement in the SSMP.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? No?
Move approval of the item.
This time I don't have any cards. Is there any other discussion by anyone?
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move on to item D2, annual financial reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2017. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council and Board of Directors receive and file the following: City of Victorville Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2017. Number 2, Victorville Water District Basic Financial Statements for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2017. 3, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Basic Financial Statements for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2017. And City of Victorville Single Audit Report on Federal Awards for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2017.
Thank you. Are there any questions of council members of staff?
Yes. I have questions. So I'm giving you guys a couple of the questions. If you want to have those questions, I've given them to staff that would hopefully be answering them. So one of my questions before I start is I would like to stop and discuss items on this item pertaining to the unfunded liabilities and OPEB obligations. So for my first question, I was thinking, what numbers are we using in this model to hire and start up our own fires? I'm concerned that city administration has used old numbers from a decade ago. My second question has to come from the attention that we're using the old retirement model, the 2% at 50. That's really an old retirement model. Would staff please inform council of the model being used currently with the figures? The third question is, if we don't have the new model that we're being used and that's distinguished currently by the PERS, which makes a distinction of the figures, that would drastically change the hiring of 65 new city employees for public safety. That means our firefighters, these employees that we're expecting to hire. This sounds to me that the new numbers would modify the current existing orders. Would that not be correct? My fourth question is, the city of Victorville no longer has a city-run fire department as of 2008. That's about a decade ago, which rings a bell as to why an old model is being used to prepare for a new city-run fire department with old figures, thus translating into a savings. The fifth question is, the city of Victorville is using numbers that fit 10 years ago. Did the city consider or not projecting forward unique factors for the implementation of a city-run fire, the inflation such as fire station budgets, operational needs, or the bidding climate, just to name a few? I took note that the recent approval of command vehicles, for instance, were just the basic models. We didn't include the commander paraphernalia that goes inside to operate within the vehicles. We did not even consider the cost for radios, which cost on average about $20,000. Such necessary costs that haven't been accounted for are masking the actual alleged savings that are already being brought to City Council. This is not only disheartening, but I feel that the wool has been pulled over Council's eyes on this one. Does any of the city administration know what the laws are in respect to PEPRA? This is another important piece of information in the discussion of PEPRA that hasn't been had with the acronym PEPRA, meaning California Public Employee Pension Reform Act. My sixth question is based on the old model from a decade ago. And now for the new model, PEPRA, laws will operate at the 2.7% at 57. I asked city administration, have we spoken about this? And is city council aware of it? Finally, my seventh question is, PEPRA by law must hire at 2.7% at 57, and even the county must abide by this. This is part of the retirement law that must be followed. So how are we, the city, fixing a nexus or finding a nexus between the 2% and the 50? No further questions.
Madam Mayor, it's helpful to have these questions written out, but I have to say none of those questions have anything to do with the financial statements that are before us at this moment. These are historical cost financial statements. Those are all questions about fire department, and she obviously has not read the note disclosures about our pension plan, which explain in painful detail how we go about calculating our pension liability. So I would prefer, we can address your questions if you want to, but I'd kind of prefer, since our auditor is here, that we address the questions about the CAFR, which is the item on the agenda right now.
It should be the item that's on the agenda.
And it is. You just don't see it. I'll build a nexus when I have commentary. Right now is questions for staff, and then I have comments, and you will see the nexus on the next section. But I appreciate your comments.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, if I might, we've just received these questions, all of which staff believes, just by glancing at them, have been discussed at great length, and particularly were included as a part of the latest analysis done January 16th, which was what had been relied on to serve your direction as staff to proceed with the city-run fire department. But notwithstanding that, to help move this item along, Councilmember Kennedy's right. The item is dealing particularly with the annual financial statements, but we can separately, as staff, respond to these questions as they've just been given to us.
Very well. Anyone?
I'd like to address a couple of questions to our auditor. If she doesn't mind coming.
Well, actually, if I may, the auditors were here and were prepared to present a PowerPoint presentation that might actually answer a lot of your questions if you're willing to indulge the time to go through the PowerPoint. She is prepared to do that. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Farr. She's the principal on our audit. She's been with I believe their firm's been doing the audit, performing the audit for the city for the past 8 years. And so after meeting with the finance subcommittee 2 times and working on this project basically this project begins just a few weeks prior to the end of the fiscal year, but continues in depth in about the October time frame. And so what you're reviewing tonight are the financial statements that cover the fiscal year of July 1, 2016, and concludes on June 30, 2017. And so with that, I turn the floor over to Jennifer Farr, and we'll go through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I have a short presentation to go over the results of the financial statement audit. And it's up on the board. I presume you have it in front of you as well. I wanted to start off with just a big picture of all of the reports that we issue, and most, I believe they are all in the agenda packet. The most substantial audit report we issue is the comprehensive annual financial report, and then we also issue separate financial statements for SCLAA and for the Water District. We also audit your federal expenditures, and we have a separate report called a single audit, and then we also have several letters that are addressed to the City Council. I did want to point out this year that you have a going concern opinion for both the city and the SCLAA report. And a going concern opinion, what that means is that we believe that the organization, that the city and the SCLAA may have difficulties paying bills as they become due. That's the accounting definition of a going concern. And so I've included on this slide some of the trends or reasons for that opinion. One of them is that the SCLAA has had difficulty making bond payments on time, and that's been occurring for several years now. As Councilmember Gomez mentioned, the pension cost is a big issue. It's a statewide issue. Your pension liability has gone up in the financial statements and may continue to go up as CalPERS has not been earning investments at as high of a rate as they were anticipating. You also have a retiree medical benefit liability that is going up, and next year, with implementation of GASB 75, you will see a larger liability on your financial statements. And there are ongoing litigation costs which additionally strain the general fund budget and the SCLAA budget. Looking at the big picture financial statements, this slide is all of the funds combined on a full accrual basis of accounting. It's called the government-wide financial statements. And I just wanted to point out between 2016 and 17, you can see that the total assets have declined by about $4 million. This is primarily due to depreciation on your capital assets that have exceeded the new capital investments. On the liability side, the liabilities have increased by $11.3 million compared to the prior year, and that's almost entirely due to the net pension liability increase. So overall, the city's equity position has declined in the tune of $15 million from 2016 to 2017. The next slide is your statement of activities, or your revenues and expenses. As a reminder, the business type activities are your water, airport, and those types of activities. And the governmental activities would include the general fund, special revenue funds, grant funds. So on this slide, you can see the governmental revenues declined by about $6.2 million from the prior year. And that was because the prior year had a one-time transfer from the old redevelopment agency, so that's not expected to continue year over year. The governmental expenses increased by about $5 million from the prior year, primarily in the areas of public safety and community development. And on the business type revenues, the revenue stayed about the same. And on the expense side, the expenses increased by about $8 million from the prior year. So overall, if you look at the revenues over under expense line, or the line that says adjusted excess revenues, we're looking at about a $20 to $20 million swing from last year to this year, and a swing in the negative direction. Looking more specifically at the general fund's your operating fund, arguably the most important fund that you're presenting in your financial statements. This is a budget versus actual schedule. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that revenues did not come in as well as high as budget. So they were short of the budget by $885,000. However, they were higher than the prior year. The revenues were higher. So there are some improvements in the tax revenues and other revenues. And on the expense side of the house, the expenses were under budget, which is a positive thing. You budgeted $57 million, expenses came in at about $55. So they were under budget by $2.7 million. However, they were higher than the prior year by about $2.3 million. And that's related to those pension cost and litigation cost. So in total, the general fund your equity balance is about $4.7 million, which is less than 10% of your total expenditures. So you're running pretty lean from a cash standpoint and from equity. And I don't recall exactly what your reserve policies are, but my guess is you're probably under your reserve policies, or where you would like to be for your general fund. Couple comments about internal controls. I did want to mention that last year we had a number of internal control recommendations, and the city did an excellent job of implementing our recommendations and making improvements. So this year we only had 2 best practice recommendations, and they were related to timeliness of grant billings and kind of a technical issue on some information technology controls. And then we have a continued compliance finding related to bond defaults on the SCLAA bonds, and also shortfalls in revenues on SCLA. But overall, a huge improvement from an internal control standpoint. And I did want to mention specifically that the finance department did a great job. We had I think we had maybe 1 journal entry this year. So a journal entry would be an error that we detected in our audit in the financial statement numbers. And in comparison to prior years, that's a huge improvement. They did a great job on making sure that the financial statements and the numbers were accurate before the audit started. So I just wanted to leave you on one comment about next year, just to give you heads up that next year you will be implementing a new accounting standard called GASB 75. This one's similar to the pension standard, where you went from not reporting a pension liability on your financial statements to reporting one. Although you have an OPEB or other post-employment benefit liability right now, you can assume that with the implementation it'll result in that number being the full liability next year. So you'll have the full picture of what those retiree medical benefit liabilities will be in the future. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the audit process or the financial statements themselves.
Yeah, just a couple questions, observations. SCLAA continues to be one of the causes for our going concern opinion, and primarily because of the bond obligations. Operationally, I was looking at page 30, which shows the overall operation of the airport. Before we factor in the bond activity, there's about a $7.3 million loss. But of that, $7.4 million is depreciation. And we don't write a check for depreciation. We all know it's an expense. It's the cost of allocating out the asset. But when you factor in the flow of funds or revenues and expense related to bonds, we end up fairly close to a break-even operation at SCLA. The big problem is the bond obligation. And I don't think time will ever come when I won't mention this. That bond obligation is a tax increment obligation. The only security for those bonds, and correct me if I've misstated or overstated, but the security for those bonds is the tax increment that flows in from property taxes paid by the people who are operating businesses at the base. Not all of us. It's not a citywide obligation. Strictly an obligation of, and that's the one we've had some difficulty paying because of the decline in property values since 2006 and so on, when those bonds were written. That's kind of a overview. Do you think there was anything inaccurate about the way I just characterized that?
I think you just characterized it more clearly than I have ever heard it characterized.
Thank you. The thing that we all need to be concerned about, which I believe is the driving force behind this going concern, which really raises questions about our ability to continue in existence. That is the pension obligation. Mushrooming pension obligation. The whole time I've been on the council, I've been fighting this going concern modification to the report, and I'm quit fighting it because I think it has to be there. The public has got to know that the pension obligation is threatening the existence of this city, and it's threatening the existence of most of the cities in California. It's not unique to Victorville. George has given us some hints about our cash requirements over the next 5 years for that pension obligation, and the OPEB obligation is almost as bad. Maybe it's worse. Who knows? Who really? Care to comment on that? And partly what I would like you to comment on is whether you think the way we account for the pension obligation is considering all the factors properly that Ms. Gomez has raised questions about. I mean, are we accounting for that obligation correctly?
All very good comments. Unfortunately, you're correct that you're not the only person in this boat. You know, you can look up and down the state of California, and what I've found is if you have public safety in particular, you seem to have a very large pension liability, and it seems to be growing, and it's been growing since GASB 68 came on board. In terms of the manner in which you account for it, it's very black and white. CalPERS is audited. CalPERS receives this information, and this information is audited and provided to you, and everybody in the CalPERS system records the transaction exactly the same. You don't have any flexibility how you record this liability. It's very strict in terms of following GASB 68, and it's very similar between every agency who's in an agent plan, like the one that you have. You're at 75% funding for the pension liability that we've reported here. It's definitely not the lowest I've seen, but it's not high either, and I don't want to speculate on what the right percentage is, but it's going down because of the accounting rules that are making that liability increase. And the upcoming change in CalPERS discount rate is going to result in another hit to this liability. So the liability is going to go up as CalPERS takes their discount rate down a whole 0.5%. It'll result in an increased liability for you next year as well.
Having said all that, the best it'll ever be is an estimate of litigation. We're looking so far down the road, 30 years out there. Estimating process, but it's pretty well developed calculation. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a question for you as well. Would you mind explaining how your firm takes the samples of the different budgets that the city has for producing either a healthy or unhealthy city of Victorville, particularly? I know you don't read everything, and it's not an actual, it's just an approximate. So I don't know how you take those samples.
Well, the purpose of the audit is to report the historical financial transactions. So when it comes to the budget is what City Council approves. So we have not been engaged to evaluate the budget, evaluate the adequacy of the budget. We're simply reporting on the facts. So the facts of the budget that was approved and the facts of the actual numbers in comparison to the budget that was approved. And that's not something that's specific to my firm, but what you've engaged us to do is to audit the numbers that are in the financial statements and let you know whether or not they are accurate in terms of the actual numbers. And
So
the budget is just there for purposes of comparison. But
So in the process, you get a couple of statements. I don't know, do you just jimmy them, or do you have like a specific app that you go through and you're like, okay, these are the statements that we're going to go ahead and kind of like sample, and if there's accuracy, we're going to label the entire thing, approximate, this is what we've seen. That's what I was getting more towards.
But your question's specific about the budget? Because for the budget, there is no testing or sampling. It's literally the budget that the City Council approves.
Thank
If
you.
I may, I believe Councilmember Gomez is speaking to the transaction sampling that you do in order to perform the audit. Not necessarily, let's take the word budget out. Let's look at, as you're reviewing the audit, or the actuals, the sampling that you do on the transactions, on the journal entries. I think that's what she's referring to as what is the method of selecting those transactions, the number of them, and so forth.
Okay. So we perform a number of different procedures. The whole audit takes about 1,500 hours of man time. So there are a variety of different procedures that we perform. In cases when we do sampling, sometimes we don't do sampling, sometimes we test 100% of transactions. In cases when we do sampling, so maybe it would be too time-consuming, too expensive for the city to pay us to look at every single check that you write, for example. So we'll use AICPA sampling methodology, which is defined by a national level that tells us if there's a certain number of transactions in a population, how many transactions we're supposed to test. So I'll give you an example. This year we tested utility bills. So we're not going to test every utility bill. We follow the AICPA sampling methodology, and we picked 40 utility bills, and we recalculated the utility bill to make sure that the customer is getting charged the correct amount. So that would be an example of sampling, but we use a variety of different sampling methodologies on different transactions.
You say that's the AIC methodology?
It's AICPA, so it's American Institute of Certified Public Accountants.
Thank you. No further questions.
One comment, Madam Mayor and Council.
Yes, go ahead.
I hope everyone understands that this is a receive and file. The council does not get to manipulate. This is what actually occurred, and this affects all of our income and expenditures. But hopefully the council will look at this, study this, ask questions, and use it as a framework when we start in the budget, which is projection and a guess of the income expenditures for the next fiscal year. And by looking at this matter, we will know where we have been off and may need some changing. But again, the budget is a financial planning document, and then all during the year, it's up to the staff to keep council informed of how close we are to our estimates of income and expenditures. And then when it's over, we do not have staff or council, but an independent professional group that comes in and tells us what actually occurred. And it's very complicated to get through it. Hopefully everyone will read this. And if they do have questions, as I will, I'll direct those to the city manager and provide the council with copies of those questions so they can also see the answers. But I did go through several pages, but it's a very arduous task to get through this thing, and I hope I make it, but it's an interesting time you put into it, and thank you.
I want to add one other thing. Gloria and I are members of the Audit Committee, which is a two-council-member subcommittee that meets with the auditors roughly at the beginning of the process, and we meet with them again at the end to review the financials, and we may dig around in a little more details than we might here. That also includes George and his accounting staff and your staff, and it's a useful, productive meeting. I hope it is for you. It is for me. But we have felt that was an important link the council ought to have to this audit process. Thanks, Jennifer, very much.
Madam Mayor, I have a quick comment. Appreciate all the work that you've done and staff has done. And this is my 4th year of getting this presentation. And I'm very concerned, especially when you look at what we're trying to do with our fire department. And I don't mean to go on about that, but it's just a statement that I'm very uncomfortable when we talk about pension liability and then making a switch. So I do have actually a lot of questions that I will send to the city manager, but it's very confusing to know that we had however many city fire department employees before. What were we obligated for that, for their retirements? And then now we're adding 65 more. So I'm just, the overall picture of the general fund looks like revenues are going down and expenses are going up. And this report gives me pause, and I'm really concerned. So as we shape the budget for the next year, it's nothing personal, nothing against anyone. It's just if this is what I think it is, this is a very bad time to start switching things. And if we had a status quo alternative that was different from this, I'd still like to keep talking about it, but I'll just give that comment and look forward to the budget process.
I'd like to make just one other comment, if I might. I'm sorry. In regard to the retirement benefits, if there's a public employee doing the task, the public agency is going to be paying, whether it's by contract or an employee or whatever. You cannot avoid it. It can't be avoided by contract or otherwise. There's no other entity going to provide a service, and the other entity, as gift to the taxpayers, pick up the unfunded liability or the retirement.
Don't even have a motion.
You can't escape it no matter how it's formed. So that needs to be clarified. Thank you.
I have more comments.
I believe those are all the questions.
Do we need a motion?
No, we don't need, this is just a receive and file, but I believe Councilmember Gomez still has some comments. It's up to you.
Do we need a motion?
No, we don't need a motion. It's just receive and file.
Correct. Okay.
But I believe there are still some comments from council members.
There's still comments or questions?
Yes, now I have comments. So I'd like to place everyone's attention to the auditor's report where it states, additionally, pension costs are expected to continue to rise annually as a result of reductions to the expected rate of return assumption change approved by the CalPERS board. The city's net pension liability has contributed to a governmental activity deficit unrestricted net position of $47.5 million. These circumstances have significantly affected the city and the rise substantial doubt about the city's ability to continue as an ongoing concern. The financial statements do not include any adjustment related to the recoverability and classification of assets carrying amounts or the amounts and classifications of liabilities that might result should the city be able to continue as a going concern. Our opinion is not modified with respect to this matter. David Farr certified public accountants continue on page 88, also known as page 376. I know that the numbering system is whacked, but if staff could address the sequence, it would greatly assist. Under notes to basic financial statements, under plan description, cost sharing plan, the city's safety plans, a cost sharing multiple employer defined pension plan administered by the CalPERS system is closed to new entrants. Benefit provisions under the plan are established by the state statute and control government resolution. CalPERS issues publicly available reports that continue a full description of the pension plan regarding a benefit provisions, assumptions, and membership info that can be found on the CalPERS website. Current law, the California Employees Pension Reform Act was signed by our current governor, Brown, in 2012. California's pension program legislation went into effect the following year as of January 1st, 2013. Although certain provisions are not effective until the expiration date of the relevant collective bargaining agreement, the employees that are affected by this distinctively new law would be new employees, which the city has started to hire. Notwithstanding that we are still paying for unfunded liabilities from our former city fire RAND department, this law and some of its provisions would apply to current participants as well. To fuel the conversation further, here are the definitions of those provisions. A new employee means an employee, including one who has been elected or appointed, or a public employer who is employed for the first time by any public employer on or after January 1st, 2013, or who was either not employed or by any other public employee prior to that date, or employed by another public employee prior to the date, but who has not subject to reciprocity between his new employer's plan and another public retirement system. A new member means an individual who either becomes a member of the plan for the first time or on or after January 1st, 2013, and either was not a member of any public retirement system prior to the date, or two, was a member of another public retirement system prior to that date, but was not subject to reciprocity between the new employer's plan and another public retirement system, or was an active member of the plan and was, after a break of service of more than 6 months, returned to active membership in the plan with a new employer. Further, under the schedules of changes in the net pensions liability and related ratios, we note that for the last 10 years in the comprehensive annual financial reports, the coffers, it's shown that the fiscal year 2013-2014 at approximately $27.8 million for fiscal year 2014 and 2015 at approximately $30.4 million, and for fiscal year 2015-2016 at approximately $39.6 million, in an upward increasing trend ascending by approximately $3 million 1 year and then by approximately $9 million the following year, respectively. Our citizens demand better service, the service that the county firefighters have exemplarily delivered, and the city council and the city of Victorville has not reneged, is available today. We are fighting to keep it still. Our community also wants ALS, paramedic level service. This is what the people see on TV and what they've have become conditioned to expect from our public safety firefighters. Our residents know that surrounding communities have ALS, paramedic level service, and they don't want to be left out. Our department has grown over the past 10 years, and currently our full-time firefighters who are paramedics, they're meeting both the quality ALS paramedics and the 8-minute response time that is expected by our community.
Are you done?
My time was up. Did you not hear?
Well, I still want to know if she's done before I get scolded. Okay, so this is just
Just receive and file. We
Receive
can
and
move on to
file.
D3 now.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Actually, Madam Mayor, if I may, just one quick question. This is a long, drawn-out process, a lot of work by a lot of staff, and I just want to publicly thank my staff, Christina James, John Mendiola, Kim Scott, Nikisha, and the many other folks that work in the finance department who put in a lot of hours, namely over the last 6 months, to be able to get to this point where we're able to present these financial statements to you in good order. And I think it's a testament as a new person serving as your finance director to see that in past years we did have some corrections that needed to be made, and the staff prior to my coming on were able to make those corrections to where there were no findings related to errors in that regard with the balance of just a couple of two. So I just want to personally thank my staff, and I want to thank the auditor for the work that they did.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Now we move on to item D3, Award of Service Provider Agreement with David Evans and Associates, Inc. in the amount of $45,900. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve a consultant professional services provider agreement with David Evans and Associates for an amount not to exceed of $45,900 for preparing sewer feasibility studies and sewer engineering services.
Thank you. Council members, do you have any questions of staff? Over here with Blanca.
Yes, I do. So I would like staff to address their recommendations for the public's benefit with creating a nexus to reasons with contextualization as to why this project is not first in the hands of the planning commissioners, but instead visiting us today at council chambers through a proposed development that isn't yet quite conceptualized.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, the recommendation is that the City Council approve a consultant agreement with David Evans and Associates in the amount of $45,900 for preparing sewer feasibility studies and sewer engineering services. This item allows staff to have access to an engineering firm that's knowledgeable of our sewer system model, and also having that service available when projects are conditioned through the planning process to undertake such a study. It's not an item necessarily that requires Planning Commission consent, nor has anything to do directly with the Planning Commission's entitlement program, but instead is required for us to evaluate to understand whether or not the system, the sewer system, can actually accommodate certain proposed developments if they in fact so choose. As a part of that, then conditions can be developed to help properly condition development to either make upgrades, enhancements, extensions, things of that nature. So with that, Brian Gangler's our city engineer. He may have a little bit more to add, but that's the general outline of what this is for.
The only thing else I would add is that we also would have the capability of doing feasibility studies on behalf of the city if we wanted to look at a certain area of our system that wasn't necessarily related to a specific development. But primarily, the purpose would be for a feasibility study for new development.
Thank you.
Move approval of the item.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Standing up.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Mr. Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move on to public comments, and I do have a couple of cards. The first one is Craig Garrick.
It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak briefly. There are two items that have been on the agenda for a long time, a couple more. One of them has to do with a lawsuit involving ComAv, item H, and then a related one, item I. As you know, 2 weeks ago on this item on the item H, the court awarded a judgment against the airport with regard to a hangar dispute, and today recorded a judgment for legal fees against the airport with regard to legal fees. The estimated legal fees right now are about $2 million. With regard to the related item, item H, that matter is pending. It was supposed to go to trial 2 weeks ago. I appreciated that it was represented to the court in that matter, and it was represented by counsel to our counsel, that they requested that we propose settlement proposals to resolve this so that we can focus on building jobs and not continuing to have this dispute. In fact, your counsel represented that the three proposals we presented on March 1st would be presented tonight, and it would be faithfully presented by the council. I appreciate that being faithfully presented. We shouldn't be. I moved my family here almost 20 years ago to build jobs. We have over 300 employees. So I appreciate the council's faithful follow through on that proposal to resolve these lawsuits and allow us to stay on the focus of continuing to produce jobs. So thank you for taking that under consideration. I take your counsel at face value that this council is in fact seriously considering those resolutions, and I look forward to those resolutions giving us some fruit and the opportunity to move away from this litigation and mitigate the damages already owed to ComAv under this one litigation. So thank you very much for that.
Now I have Vicki Mack.
My name is Vicki Mack. I am a mental health advocate, nonprofit director, and lifelong City of Victorville resident. My issue is the vagrancy panhandling situation in our community. I participated with the Institute of Public Strategies in surveying area alcohol vendors about the problem from their perspective. One vendor got to what seems to be the heart of the matter, as she described a continuous loop of alcohol purchase, consumption, panhandling, and alcohol purchase. I am aware that the city has made efforts to discourage the public from giving to panhandlers, and I believe that this is a move in the right direction, but that it should go further. Specific mechanisms should be provided for those wishing to give to the misfortunate. The City of Los Angeles recently implemented an innovative plan where old parking meters were repurposed to collect change for the homeless. Research tells us between 25 and 68% of the chronically homeless have a substance abuse problem. People wanting to help the homeless probably won't be dissuaded, but they do want to know that their money will go directly to the purpose of helping them. It is said that the average panhandler makes between $40 and $200 per day. Imagine if what 25 panhandlers make could be pooled and directed towards real solutions like inpatient treatment, job development, or housing. This could have the twofold effect of ensuring that those who truly need help have the opportunity to get it, and dry up the funding source for those not seeking to change, which may drive them to seek a different place to panhandle, relieving the taxpayers of the burden of the costs of law enforcement, emergency service, and health care. It may discourage the proliferation of alcohol vendors in this area and increase community safety, wellness, and quality of life. Again, I am asking the council to consider creating a mechanism to collect funds that would otherwise be given to panhandlers. Thank you.
Thank you. Norm Miller.
Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Norman Miller, and I wanted to bring up last year we had a problem with a water leak on our dirt road, and the water department or Public Works, whoever it was good enough to come out on Christmas Eve and fix that for us. I just want to thank everybody for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. I don't have any other cards. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? See anyone? So we move on to reports from our city manager.
A couple of announcements. First, March 3rd through April 14th, we have the annual In-N-Out Burger Cover-to-Cover Reading Club program. That's out at the Victorville Library. It's an opportunity to earn certificates if you can prove that you read 5 books. So that's an exciting opportunity for children ages 4 through 12. There's an outdoor water conservation workshop Friday, March 16th, 8 o'clock to 10 a.m. here at Victorville City Hall. And we mentioned it at the last meeting. We'll do it again on March 17th. There's a run in the park. It's a 5K and a 3K run and walk. All I have.
Very well. Okay, now we move on to discussion and possible action regarding items for the upcoming City Council agenda. And I will start with Mr. Negrete.
No, Madam Mayor, thank you.
No, I don't have anything.
Curious when we're going to start budget proposals.
Yes, Madam Mayor, City Council, the staff has actually started the ball rolling on preparing the budget for 18-19. There have been a few meetings that have taken place the last couple of weeks. Currently, they're working on their capital budgets, and the next deadline is related to their personnel budgets. And any new requests or requests for deletions will be coming next, and then we'll start on the line by line. So you would expect to get to workshops, John, in the month of May early. So that's the ball has already started rolling, and so expect the first iterations to reach your desk by beginning of May.
Thank you.
I also have things that I like to add to the agenda, discussion and possible action. The first one is I like the council support in moving into a favorable resolution with our largest employer in SCLA. I move for a global settlement and mutual releases, which stops the fighting among each other that has gone now for 2 years. Is there a second?
There being no second, the motion fails.
The second one is I'm requesting that council support in a proposed mediation which is about getting a retired judge to assist with resolving this fight and costly litigation. I move for a proposed mediation resolution. Is there a second to my motion?
There being no second, the motion fails.
The third and final thing I like to add, I don't need the support of council on this matter since we are already in this bind and the majority has leaned this way already. However, it would behoove me if I don't bring it up for a motion to discuss and take action for a future agenda item. So I move to continue the status quo. Is there a second?
There being no second, the motion fails.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move on to reports from council members, and you have 5-minute limit. Ms. Gomez?
I have a PowerPoint presentation as soon as it starts. So here on March 6th, so we'll start off. This is ComAv in the background. You would think this is in my backyard, this is in your backyard, this is in our backyard, right? Well, ComAv is located at Southern California Logistics Airport in Victorville on 18499 Phantom West, Building 17 in Victorville. This first slide gives you a glimpse of what ComAv is and does not. And if it doesn't elaborate, I'm going to go ahead and give you a few other pointers here. This second slide depicts ComAv's role in our community. ComAv Asset Management employs between 35 to 45 workers. ComAv Technical Services employs over 200 employees. Combined, ComAv employs approximately 300 employees, many who are locally residing not only in the city of Victorville, but also in the Victor Valley and in the San Bernardino County area. The third slide, This slide is ComAv's customer base, their clientele. You see big names such as Delta, Southwest, China Airlines, Boeing, and FedEx, to name a few. Most of Boeing's jobs are brought to the Southern California Airport Authority right here in the city of Victorville. Why do I say this? Because if the city doesn't look for a happy medium to settle an existing, pending, and any anticipated litigation with ComAv, we're also hurting the clientele, the customer base, the local working residents, and more than meets the eye. ComAv's technical services is FAA and EASA certified. It recently won the coveted FAA Diamond Award not only once, but 15 times now, year after year. Looking at the second top left quadrant, you see an orange airplane that fits into Hangar 681. The hangar is currently in litigation, in court, in dispute. ComAv continues to provide solutions for its customers that are outside of the technical box solutions. Here you see engines that are for sale or lease. Approximately 60 aircraft disassemblies take place annually. I'd like to read some of that with ComAv. Here's a couple of other things, how they support with aircraft. They also have currently owned inventory, more than 50,000 aircraft parts for all commercial aircraft types. You see ComAv at the Victor Valley. Pay attention to the arrows on the side. ComAv is the largest continuous employer at SCLA. ComAv currently employs approximately 300 full-time and part-time employees, with more company with expansion in 2018. ComAv is currently increasing employment for mechanics, engineers, executives, and support positions. Over 30 million direct economic benefits to the high desert. Economists tell us that it is estimated that over $150 million is indirect economic benefits to the high desert. ComAv and education. Bottom line, ComAv has been doing this with our children, creating aviation pathway tours, apprenticeship programs, and has strongly supported community programs like the Victor Valley Foundation to empower and educate students to succeed. ComAv strongly believes in giving back and strengthening the Victor Valley community, especially when it comes to educating our next generation. ComAv in the community. Here images of real-life events that ComAv has been encouraging the next generations. Do you see Dolores Williams with Millionaire Minds, where it's cool to do your best in school, touring and learning about possible future jobs and keeping the kids engaged in education? You also see Victor Valley High School being taught about the endless possibilities of industry and being prepared for the future, in addition to participating in student career fairs. This slide, which is the last one, is a recent job fair and opportunities to local citizens, where ComAv partnered with other organizations to give back to the communities in more ways than one. So I urge people that are here as an electorate or watching our stream live, if you are having a couple of concerns, we really do need people to start voicing their opinions. I can't do it alone. We need a strong voice, and it's clear that our monies are going
You have 30
elsewhere,
seconds.
and that money needs to be expended where the community sees fit. So if you're not part of the table where you sit at, you're probably part of that menu, and that's not a very good place to be at. Thank you. No further comments or questions.
At the last council meeting, I was stepped out because of the discussion of the golf course. And so I don't discuss the budgeting, but there were comments made that were directed to me, and I do intend to answer those. The comments started, I happen to know that two-decade council member Terry Caldwell plays golf along with former city manager. Terry Caldwell plays golf with the city council, the mayor, Ryan McEachran, Jim Cox. I want to set the record straight. I do not play golf with Terry Caldwell. I haven't played golf with Terry Caldwell. Maybe 10, 12, 14 years ago, I do not play golf with Ryan McEachran. I think in the last 2 years, I played in a golf tournament twice. I think it was a chamber. I do not play golf with either one of those individuals at Green Tree or anywhere else. Just so you will know the extensive benefit I have in playing golf, In 2015, I had 5 rounds of golf at Green Tree. That's for the year. 2016, 3 rounds of golf. 2017, 3 rounds of golf. Also discussion about the benefit on the golf course, maybe up to $50,000. I visited the county assessor's office in Hesperia. Anyone can do this. And the county assessor's office indicated that private golf courses, closed communities such as Spring Valley Lake, there is an additional asset on the properties and a higher tax. But in Green Tree, the county assessor does not consider the properties on the golf course as being positive, and nor are they assessed any additional amount. They indicated that there may be a small area where some homes that are well kept up, if there's grass in the backyard and they're fairly new, are a little more than the normal sales price, but most are less. They're appraised at less than the normal sales price. I then went to the High Desert Realtors Association, and this is the following information. In 2017, the total sales of homes in Victorville was 1,949. On the golf course, there was 445. The sales price average in the city of Victorville was $230,859. On the golf course was $206,892, or an average price per house of $24,000 less than the rest of the city. That information is also available and can be checked. In regard of some kind of insider trader information or purchasing or selling property, I purchased my home in 68, far before any contemplation of change of ownership. I have lived in the house since that time. I believe that is 50 years. And all during the time that I have lived there, I have not purchased, invested, sold on any house or living unit on or near the golf course in Victorville. So those, thought I'd better answer those and set the record straight, which, since there was a lot of comments made, that simply were patently untrue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else?
Apparently, Councilmember Gomez knows no boundaries for her completely inappropriate comments. She knows, as Mr. Garrick knows, that we are engaged in litigation. Litigation under the Brown Act is to be conducted in court and in closed session. Kind of public grandstanding, try to get people who are obviously uninformed and don't know the facts of the case to get involved in it is just totally inappropriate. And I object. I resent it, but I really object to it. I think it's a complete disregard for the laws that we all have agreed to abide by. This matter will be resolved in court. I think that's where it ought to be resolved.
Well, I believe that we are sworn in when we are sworn into City Council, that we come in to stand up for our city. And I don't mean that we have to go against the law, but use principles that actually protect the people. And this issue with ComEd, like I said, has never been discussed with 4 council members outside of closed session. I understand we have a council member who has taken it out of closed session, but then it's not up to me to reprimand or to figure out whether there's any law breaking here. But I'm very disappointed that we are here with this issue today.
Madam Mayor, there was one other thing I wanted to say. For council members who have not met with George Harris, should do so. He's done a very thorough and detailed comparison of the county's latest fire proposal with our operating plan for a in-house fire department. What you'll find is, for the same amount of money, we will staff with more people and a smaller pension liability. We're not adding, we're structuring the way we staff fire. So I think it's really important, Eric, Block, anybody who is concerned about this, to meet with George and look at his analysis and comparison of these two plans. That's all.
Anyone else? This meeting is adjourned.
We do have to go back in the closed session briefly.
That is correct. Back to closed session.
Ready.
Council has concluded its closed session. There is no additional reportable action. However, very minor correction on the prior reportable action with respect to Council's direction to appeal. I previously indicated that it was with respect to litigation on items H and I. It is the direction was to appeal only with respect to the litigation set forth on item H, and that was a 4-1 vote. That is all the reportable action.